Good morning. I'd like to call to order the Pierce County Council and Monday study session. The date is May 19, 2025. Time is 11 a.m. All members are present except for council members Krueger, Morrell, and Denson. They are excused. Double checking. I didn't leave anyone else. We are going to start this morning with our legislative update. We'll kick it over to Mr. Taylor and Mr. Shaw. It's nice to see you again.
All right. Good morning. So as you can see, Mr. Shaw is present virtually today. I've asked Mr. Shaw to provide just a brief check-in on the status of governor action relative to bills enacted during this session. I think members are aware that the governor actually has on a number of bills a few more days to act. But nonetheless, we thought it would be helpful to the members to share what information is available at this point in time. So Mr. Shaw is present here to do that. The anticipation is that we'll have another session in a couple of weeks once the dust settles, and we'll get a complete end of session report out from Mr. Shaw. So with that, I'll turn things over to Mike.
Thank you. Members of the council. Again, this should be pretty quick. We're kind of waiting to see what tomorrow brings, but let's talk about today. Today, the governor signed House Bill 2015. That's the criminal justice sales tax local option, plus the grants that are tied to the $100 million that were in the budget for law enforcement. Now, that was one of the county's major priorities of session. You might remember back in March, I believe Executive Mello and Prosecutor Robinette went down and testified, and it did get signed this morning. So that's good news. I got to give a shout out to Wasatch's Brad Banks. He represented the lobbying team on this down there today. Again, some of you might have already received an invite to go down for that signing. But again, Mr. Banks and a couple others from the lobbying that we all worked together with went down and represented the lobbying crew on that today. So that's good news. Now, the big question hanging out there is on the budgets and the revenues that prop up those budgets. So we're talking operating, transportation, and capital budget. Some of you might have seen in the newspapers, there's been a lot of groups from the business community. There's one large state employee union asking for vetoes on these, and we just don't know what's going to happen. I think last time I talked to you, we talked a little bit about vetoes on the budget. The governor actually has line item veto on budgets, but on the revenues, those are policy bills. He can only do sections. And so we're just having to play wait and see. Now, the operating budget is supported by a number of bills, but three major bills. And these are the ones that I think we're all kind of wondering what's going to happen tomorrow. There's House Bill 2081, which is the B&O tax increase. It kind of expands it, has some surcharges on it. It's the largest source of revenue for these budgets. Again, you might recall that when we started the session, we were $12 billion in the wrong side of the ledger for the operating budget. By the time we got to the end, it rose to 16 billion. So this generates, I think, about 5.6 billion over the 6-year period that they're looking at. And then the other one that we're kind of keeping an eye on is Senate Bill 5814. That's the sales tax expansion of the sales tax to other services. And that raises about 2.7 billion over a 6-year period. So we just don't know what's going to happen. There's some rumors that there'll be slight vetoes in the budget as well, but that it won't force us into a special session. But then if there is significant vetoes, we could be in special session next week. So we just have to wait to see what tomorrow brings on that one. Now, I mentioned the state employee union asking for a veto. You might have seen in the newspaper. There was one of the state unions, employee unions, that did not ratify in time. There's a deadline, I believe it was April 1st. They didn't get it done in time. And so that was not funded in the budget. So they're asking for a veto of the budget so that can be included going forward. We just don't know what's going to happen there. Now, the transportation budget also is relying on a large revenue package, a 6-cent gas tax. We're waiting to see what's going to happen on that as well. That's 2801. And there's also another bill, 2802, that does a transfer not this biennium, but in future bienniums of sales tax to help prop up the transportation budget. Again, I wish I had some good rumors for you, but we just don't know what's going to happen on that. So we expect to see that tomorrow. So far, they have not been listed, scheduled, but we're expecting them to be scheduled for a signing or some kind of executive event tomorrow. So again, I knew this would be very short. I didn't have a lot for you, but I wanted to just kind of bring you up to speed where we're sitting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. I will, one for the record, Councilmember Krueger Morrell have arrived several minutes ago. We'll see if anyone has questions. I mean, we all have questions, but we're basically waiting on a governor to get him figure out. So, but Councilmember Morrell, you are contemplating a question? Let me turn it on and see if it works. You want to? Councilmember Ayala.
I can pass this over.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is pertaining to the $100 million grant for public safety. Do you know what the requirements are to apply for those grants? Whether they have to go to specific tasks for public safety, or can they be used across the boards for public safety?
There's the sales tax and the grants, and the sales tax is pretty broad. It's kind of a general criminal justice. So that would run the gamut, I think, from therapeutic courts to law enforcement. I believe the $100 million on the grants themselves is kind of an addition to that, but I believe it's much more aimed at law enforcement. But I'll have to go back and look at that. And I don't believe there was any veto of that bill today. So.
Okay. I had just heard that there was, it did have some focus on funding co-responders versus general law enforcement. So I was just kind of curious to see if there's more details as far as what those grants can be used for.
I'll do some, frankly, council member, it's been a couple of weeks since I've read the bill, so I have to go back and I'll get back to you with that information.
Okay. And as far as the sales tax, I assume that's 1/10 of 1%.
That's correct.
And when can that be implemented?
I believe the implementation date for this, and I'm going to scroll down to it so I can find that. Oh, gosh.
But Councilmember Morrell, we can provide a council staff can provide an updated summary. Ms. Kelly provided a summary of the bill about a month ago. Staff can go and update the information. It does include the range of allowed uses and the process by which the legislative body would use to enact the tax. And we can make certain that it includes any, I'm not aware of any restrictions on the timing once the actual law is in effect, but we'll confirm if there's any waiting period or other timeline specified in statute for you, so you have it. Because it's a very important bill for the council to be able to consider, whether or not the council ultimately decides to support it or not. It's a very important tool in your toolbox to consider. And so we'll make certain that you have the information, the council as a whole has the information needed, likely by this fall when you'd be contemplating it, I suspect.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it'll be important forward thinking since we're entering into a new biennial budget, what resources we have available. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for the questions. Mr. Shaw, can you remind me in our council charter, if something is not signed by the executive, it kind of goes into effect, is my remembrance. Does that same rule apply at the state, or is there
It
a
does.
different?
It does, Madam Chair. If he does not sign, does not act on the bill, it becomes law. So
Does that include budgets?
I believe it includes budgets, but I do expect we will see those tomorrow.
Okay. I do as well, but I just thought I'd check.
No, it's good. Good. And just to go back, I quickly looked through the 2015. The effective date is the 90 days after it's signed, but it has some. The reason I'm kind of equivocating that there's some times when you have to do it you have to impose a sales tax by a certain date, and I believe that's June 30th of 2028, or then the city can go. There's a bunch of that. So I want to kind of get together with Mr. Taylor, give you a real concise answer to your question, Councilmember Morell. I hate not giving you a real quick one, but you will, again, effective date by this June, and then you have to act probably by the June 2028. Otherwise, the city's step in.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. We have a phone a friend in the chambers here who's like signaling she's ready and excited to try and fill in some of the questions. So I'm going to have
Wonderful.
Ms. Kelly come up and see if she can illuminate a little bit more.
Thank you, Chair Hitchin. Andrea Kelly, council staff. Mr. Shaw is correct. The 2015 would take effect 90 days after adjournment, provided funding is approved by June 30th. The Department of Revenue cannot implement the bill until January 1 of 2026, which allows CJTC that time to the Criminal Justice Training Commission the time to develop this grant program. The cities and counties must levy the new sales tax by December 31st, 2027.
Okay. Councilmember Morell, any other? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shaw. I'm not seeing anyone else with questions, so we will move on to, thank you very much, and we'll see you once things are signed. We will move on to item number 3, which is review of today's agenda. Ms. Long.
All right, so this is tomorrow's regular council meeting agenda. It is amended. We'll start with your consent agenda. There are 2 items for introduction and scheduling, 1 ordinance and 1 resolution. The ordinance is 2025-513. This is adopting a new chapter 240 of the county code, community engagement financial support, and directing the finance director to report back by a date certain. You will be referring this to the Rules and Operations Committee and setting the final for June 10th on this one. The resolution is R 2025-151. This is setting the date of an evening District 2 council meeting that will be Monday, June 23rd at 5:30 at the Edgewood City Hall. And you'll be setting the final on this one for May 27th. You have 2 resolutions for final action. First of those is R 2025-152. This is confirming the reappointment of 1 member to the Pierce County Allocation Advisory Commission for Prevention Services. And the other is R 2025-155. This is confirming the appointment of 2 new members to the Aging and Disability Resources Advisory Board. You have 2 proclamations tomorrow. The first is a proclamation honoring our heroes, Pierce County Remembers. That is proclaiming Monday, May 26th. For the Memorial Day holiday. And the other is a proclamation proclaiming May 18th through the 24th as National Public Works Week in Pierce County. That one was requested by council members Denson and Hitchin. I forgot to mention the requesters on the first one. The Memorial Day proclamation was requested by council members Herrera, Denson, and Hitchin. Decide on your readers for tomorrow.
Councilmember Herrera, are you interested in reading the Memorial Day one? And then Councilmember Denson will not be here in person,
Okay.
so unless somebody else really wants to read Public Works, I'm happy to do it. So, okay.
All right, thank
All
you.
good. Thank you.
Moving to section 8 resolutions, you have 1 item here. It's R 2025-150. This is setting the date of an evening District 7 council meeting that will be Monday, June 2nd at 5:30 at Hart Church. That's located on Fox Island. And this also repeals a previously adopted resolution R 2025-107 related to the venue change. And those are your agenda items for tomorrow's regular meeting.
Thank you. Are there any questions on tomorrow's agenda? Seeing none, and we have no amendments and no grants that I'm aware of.
Nope.
Okay, so then we'll move on to our committee schedule.
All right, thank you. So this afternoon at 1:30, you do have a Community Development and Environment Committee meeting. There is one proposal and one report on your agenda. The proposal is O 2025-512. This is adopting the Pierce County Commute Trip Reduction 4-year plan, 2025 through 2029, and amending Chapter 1050 of the County Code. This has a June 3rd final hearing date. And next you have the Code Enforcement and Public Nuisance Report. That will be with Planning and Public Works staff. Tomorrow, May 20th, beginning at 9:30, of a Health and Human Services Committee meeting. There are 3 presentations. First of those is Tacoma Pierce County Habitat for Humanity general updates, including updates on acquisition and sale of Pierce County Housing Authority single-family home properties. That will be with Habitat for Humanity staff. Next, you have the Family Promise of Pierce County updates on shelter access, hub, and other operations. That will be with Family Promise staff. And then finally, you have the Tacoma Rescue Mission updates on Good Neighbor Village and shelter expansion, and that will be also with Tacoma Rescue Mission. At noon is your regular Tuesday study session. In addition to your usual agenda items, you do have 2 grants to review for the May 27th council agenda. Both are Federal Aviation Administration grants for Thunfield reconstruction design. The 2 grants are just different dollar amounts. And then the next item for discussion is the Animal Shelter Services contract briefing, and you'll have the Sheriff's Office staff available and animal control as well. And then at 3 p.m. is your regular council meeting. On Wednesday, May 21st, beginning at 9:30, you do have a Flood Control Zone District Executive Committee meeting, and those are your meetings for the remainder of this week.
Thank you. Ms. Long, can you remind the council about the role we play with these 21-day notice in reference to what's happening tomorrow? Just like, what does this mean and why are we doing this?
Yeah, so the 21-day notice is a section in the budget. And we've had that in there for quite a number of years. It's really just a notice to the council. You're not required or necessarily authorized to take an action, but it's sort of a heads up. We have 21 days before this contract is going to be renewed. Many times these are not contracts that necessarily come to the council for initial approval, but it's just informative for you.
Okay. So I know there's been a lot of conversation and several people sent questions about the animal control contract with the Humane Society. So we thought we'd have a briefing, but also wanted to level set. We aren't debating what's in the contract. We are being informed and able to ask questions to understand and make it public. But we don't get to vote or do anything. And so we will have the experts in the room to have the conversation and get us all on the same page. But just wanted to make sure people are aware, because initially I was like, I have some thoughts. And so we will get to share our thoughts and talk through it. So, okay. Anything else on committees for the week? Any questions for Ms. Long on that? Okay, we'll get to section 5, which is administrative items. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. Good morning. Just a few items. First, you have a hard copy of a markup of the position description for a policy director with your materials. Staff or I am asking you to take a look at that, and if you have any questions or feedback regarding the changes, if you could provide that to me. Under the council's rules of procedure, the ultimate approval of the changes in the job, our position description are vested in the Rules and Operations Committee. They're the entity responsible ultimately for it, but the chair wanted to make certain that all the members had an opportunity to see the potential changes and to provide feedback. So I'm not looking for that feedback right now at this meeting, but I will send you an email asking for feedback. I'll attach an electronic copy of the marked up document as well, so you have it at your fingertips. So that's just item number 1, just a heads up. regarding potential changes, with the intention, of course, then that the office would put that position out for recruitment quickly, so that position can be filled in time to provide assistance relative to the budget and other major lifts of the council in the coming months. That's item number one. Item number two is just a heads up about the joint study session with the Port of Tacoma. So I know that members are tracking the fact that the council does have an opportunity to meet jointly with the port commissioners. That meeting is scheduled for June the 4th. If you recall, it was rescheduled due to conflict. So it's currently scheduled for Wednesday, June the 4th. It'll be at the Fabulous Center, which is where the commission normally meets. The business part of that meeting begins at noon, but the port commissioners wanted to make certain that you had an opportunity to eat. And so there's a meeting will actually start at 11:30. There won't be any business conducted, but there'll be box lunches available for members at that time. So I'll send out an email, but I'm just looking for confirmation as to which members will be attending the 11:30 to noon portion, so that the port can certainly have adequate number of lunches available for folks. The draft agenda, or I guess it's really not draft at this point in time, the port's finalized an agenda for that meeting. The topics that are going to be discussed are council priorities, Pierce County Council priorities, which he'll talk about a little bit later today in this study session. The Port of Tacoma is going to talk about their priorities. There will be a discussion about industrial lands, the need for industrial lands, the status of industrial lands in the county. That'll be led by the port. Planning and Public Works staff have been asked to provide an update on the status of the Milroy Bridge project. So maintenance, long-term plans to replace the Milroy Bridge. So staff, Letitia Neal, county engineer, will provide that information. There'll be a discussion about workforce development and the need for workforce housing. That'll just be a friendly dialogue really between the commissioners and the council. It's not a scripted discussion. It's just an opportunity just to share thoughts on that particular topic. So that is the joint meeting on June the 4th. And then the last item I wanted to touch on was discussed briefly at rules this morning, and that is your committee of the whole meeting on May 28th. So as members will recall, you had a fiscal year 24 end of year briefing by Julie DeMuth a couple of weeks ago at this study session. A number of council members weren't able to make that meeting. And there were some questions about the risk model that was presented, for instance, and members had asked for a little bit more time to be able to sit with that material. So on the 28th, Ms. DeMuth will be back at Committee of the Whole. She's going to go through some of the same material that she presented at May 5th, updated. We'll also talk about, we've asked her to talk about the assumptions and instructions that have been given to departments relative to preparation of the 2026-2027 budget. So you have that background information as you go into your budget retreat. I've asked for updates on status of American Rescue Plan Act spending. I think members are aware all the funds have been obligated, but the ask has been just for a check-in as to where the actual release of funds to the different entities, policy or programs are. So we've asked for that report out. And then lastly, to the extent that it's known, big picture information relative to the state and federal budget. So by then, we'll know what the governor did with the state's budget. If there's any new information to share relative to the federal government and direction or instructions that they've pushed out to state or local governments, or impacts that have occurred to state and local governments or are anticipated, we've asked that that information be shared to the extent that it's known. And I know that members have already, a month and a half ago, so got their kind of a big picture snapshot as to where the potential risks lie relative to the federal government, right? Any updated information that at least that's being factored into the budget for 26, 27 and the instructions that be discussed. So that's the 28th. Just wanted to highlight that. Again, because we had some members that weren't present on May 5th, and there was the desire to have an opportunity to circle back on the risk model and the forecast model used for the budget. So that'll be before you. So that's what I have for administrative items for now. Thank you.
Thank you for the overview. Are there any questions for Mr. Taylor?
Are we losing microphones that fast? Are they?
It's not working, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll have to check
Councilmember
that out.
Henson.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. My question pertains to, we have the General Assembly coming up. Is it this week? 20?
It's the 22nd. Yes, this week, the
22nd.
22nd, correct.
And I just wanted to see if there's any arrangements being made to get up there. As far as options for us, because driving is not very convenient, so.
Okay, we haven't made any arrangements for van pulling from the office. I'm certainly happy to do that. Though, if that's what you're thinking, I can inquire about the availability of one of the passenger vans, and I just need to get a count as to which members are planning on attending. We probably don't need a van, probably just a, SUV or something. But I'm happy to circle back on that. with
Okay,
council members.
also, if you could check on transit options,
Sure.
like light rail and things like that, so thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the questions. Mr. Taylor, we talked about having my three colleagues who went to the other Washington. Was that for today or tomorrow? I cannot remember.
I believe your intention was to give them opportunity today if they wish to speak to it.
Okay.
Yeah, tomorrow
And if they're not ready or don't
you
have
can
things to share
speak
yet,
to it
but
tomorrow.
didn't bring it tomorrow?
Tomorrow? Okay.
Okay.
Settled. Okay.
Tomorrow it is.
All right.
Perfect. Okay. So then we will, move on to other business, and take a look at the 26-27 priorities. I just want to start with, thank you to the team for taking, what sometimes feels like a mind dump where all of us put our information out there into the world during a long meeting, and then they figure out a way to kind of coalesce things. And so I really appreciate kind of where this landed, that it fits on it's a large piece of paper, but it fits on a piece of paper. And so we will turn this over to staff to kind of walk us through where we are and what's happening next. So Mr. Taylor.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to provide the overview, but there's several staff present today that are going to help me out or help the council out as needed in this discussion. So thank you, Javier, for bringing up the PowerPoint. So as the chair indicated, the purpose of today's section in the study session is discuss the draft 2026-2027 priorities. The draft document was distributed to the council members about a week and a half ago. So you've had a little more than a week with the material. What we're going to do today is review the draft with the members. We're looking for feedback. The ultimate goal is to try to finalize the priorities today if possible. It may not be possible, but that's the goal. I've got a PowerPoint I'm going to use to frame that conversation. I'm going to try to do the PowerPoint in 10 minutes or less so that you have as much time as possible to talk. I'm going to run through background. I'm going to provide a little bit of an overview, and then we're just going to answer questions. The reason we're hoping to get this finalized is that it can serve as a foundation for your June 5th budget retreat, or at least important input for that conversation. All right, so with that, I'll go ahead and launch into the PowerPoint. So next slide, please. So the agenda for today is I'm just going to review the framework, the process that was used by staff to develop the draft priorities, as well as the council. Of course, you're the policymakers, you're the principals on this. So we'll talk about how staff took the information that you provided to us, and then converted it into the priorities document. I'm going to summarize draft priorities at a high level. I'm not going to go into all the detail that's here. There's just not enough time to do that. And we're going to talk about any refinements that you want to the document. Go ahead, next slide, please. So the general framework that was used with staff's review of the output from your council retreat in March is that we wanted to make certain that, of course, the information that's portrayed in the document that we produced is accurate, that it correctly identifies the issues that are of highest importance to the council from that retreat, as well as any follow-up from members after the retreat. We did have some follow-up from members after the retreat, and we wanted to make certain that that was appropriately and accurately captured within the document as well. We wanted to make certain that it was actionable. So when staff looked at the priorities, we looked at it through a filter or a lens where we asked the question, could the priority be affected by council policy? So legislatively affected, by budget action, or by leadership. So if there was leadership action that council or council members could perform at the local or regional level that would affect the priority, we wanted that to be captured. And of course, with any goal setting or priorities exercise, you want to make certain that what you're seeking to do is actually achievable. So there was a filter for, is it achievable or not? And then with the document itself, we wanted to make certain that it was focused, it was easy to read, it was manageable in size. We tried to get it to a single page. You've got a hard copy of that single page. It's a big single page, but it's a single page nonetheless before you today for reference. Go ahead, next slide, please. So just generally the process overview is, of course, you had your retreat in March, towards the end of March. At that retreat, you reviewed the status of the 2023 through 2025 priorities. You had a lot of discussion about what priorities should be retained, which ones should be deleted, which ones should be modified. You identified some new priority areas for 2026, 2027. Kind of a common theme that came out in that conversation was that the 2023, 2025 priorities were just too long. It's a 12-page document, 11 goal areas, 100 different actions. It's pretty voluminous. So it was a lot to try to work with. I think staff did a good job working with it, but nonetheless, it was a big, thick, heavy document. So that was a clear comment that came back to staff. As I mentioned before, staff took the output from that retreat and reviewed it. We compiled all the comments, categorized the comments, consolidated them initially into an unconstrained list of priorities, and then staff reviewed that list further for the topics that I talked about. Is it something really ultimately that the council can affect at the end of the day? And then it was further refined and focused towards that goal of making the document or the priorities as accessible as possible on a single page, look at them at a glance, be able to digest the material fairly quickly, not just for the members, but for the public that might be interested in the priority areas. And then, of course, today we're presenting it to you for refinement. So you have it before you to review. And again, you've had it for about a week and a half. So I know I've had conversations with a number of members to get some initial feedback. I appreciate the feedback that has been provided. I expect there'll be some discussion today amongst each of you that might help staff further refine this document. Let's go to the next slide, please. I want to just talk about the accessibility improvement one more time because staff's particularly proud of being able to get it down to a manageable size. So just as for reference, again, the prior priorities draft was 12 pages, about 3,500 words. This current draft is one large page and less than 500 words. So we think it's definitely, we hope it's more user-friendly. Hopefully we haven't lost important detail in condensing it down. Maybe it needs to be condensed further. I don't know. We'll see what council has to say today. All right, go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so of course you've got this document before you in hard form. It'll be a little easier to read than what's up on the screen, but that's what we're going to focus on today. Go ahead, next slide, please. So the current iteration has 7 priority statements. I've just stated them on this slide just for the public, so it's easier to read and for you. So 7 priority statements. There's a statement in the area of housing and homelessness, a statement in the area of public safety, physical and behavioral health, education and workforce, economic growth and infrastructure, environment and climate, and then community building. And then within each of those priority statements, you'll note there's a bulleted list of focus areas, 4 to 5. There may be a couple where there's 6 priority or focus areas for each priority. But again, it's an attempt to highlight certain activities that the council could affect by budget or policy. Okay, go ahead and move forward to the next slide, please. The priorities document also includes a value statement section now. The value statements were taken in part from some prior priorities work that previous council had done, but it was expanded upon. And this was staff's attempt to respond to the comments at the retreat regarding social justice and equity, for instance, and regional leadership. One of the comments, several comments that were made at the retreat is that social justice and equity, for instance, should just be reflected in all that the council does in terms of budget and policy, all that the county does. So rather than that topic area being called out as a priority specific, it's more of a value that should, permeate or overlay most all activities of the council. And so we've moved that into the value section under the title of fairness. Regarding regional leadership, we moved that into this category of collaboration and innovation. Again, it was the same kind of thought, is that council members expect to lead regionally. That's just part of the job. And so that should be reflected in the values. We also added a statement about fiscal management. So you'll see that at the bottom of the list. Is not the least important by any means, but it's titled Strong Fiscal Management, and it talks about the council's values in that area. All right, go ahead, next slide, please. Okay, so I did that in, I think, definitely less than 10 minutes. And so we want to turn things over to the council for discussion, and we're really looking for feedback on as to whether or not the draft priorities are in line with what you were kind of expected a product to look like. Are they clear? Are the priorities clear? Do you agree with staff that they're actionable? Maybe you don't. I'd like to hear that today. If there's, as you've had an opportunity to review this material over the last week or so, did you see any significant gaps, things missing that you expected to be there from, the discussion at the retreat? Is there modifications to this new values section that should happen? Do you like the format? Should it be small? I mean, the other option on the format is that it's 8.5 by 11 double-sided. So it can be converted that way fairly easily. And then any other thoughts? One thing I didn't touch on in the slide deck, but I just want to touch on real quick before I just go into listening mode, is our mission statement. So there's a mission statement at the top of the document. That mission statement is the council's existing mission statement. That's the mission statement that the council, prior council enacted or endorsed 3 or 4 years ago, and staff hasn't made any modifications to that mission statement. But if, the current council sees a need to refine that mission statement, then that's certainly up for discussion as well. So with that, I think I'm done with the overview, and I'll take direction or questions, as will the other staff that are present. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I'm going to look to colleagues to get initial feedback, thoughts, questions, and go to Councilmember Kruger first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just was curious, does the county have its own definition of what social justice is, or do you just Google Merriam's, the dictionary and take it?
Ms. Kelly? Yeah, is there an actual definition that the county has unique to Pierce County? I didn't think so.
I don't even know, I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, there's the commonly understood definition of social justice. I don't know that we have I don't believe we have our own unique Pierce County definition.
I just remember seeing it on campuses when I worked down at the state, and I didn't understand what it was or what it meant and such. And I just, seems that a lot of people have a different idea what it meant, and that maybe it's something that should be clarified on what the council's intent is on that meaning. Yeah. And is there any kind of system in looking at this in, so depending on the budgeting and the forecasting and whatnot, that says, okay, we have a shortage of dollars. On a scale of 1 to 10, which of the items here would be looked at first at reducing or changing or whatnot? Or if there's a huge abundance of dollars, what would we increase on this? Is there any kind of a metric that we've looked at and how to manage that?
So that's your budget process from staff's opinion, or at least my opinion. The rest of the staff may not agree. I'm sure they do, but that's your budget process in the fall.
Going through that.
And so,
I'm just-
as I stated earlier, one of the hopes here is that if the priorities are, in a more or less final form, they can then be used as a tool with your budget retreat, June the 5th. Ultimately, of course, you're going to get a budget from the executive in the fall that reflects the executive's priorities, hopefully takes into consideration the priorities that you'll communicate to the executive, and then the council will go through its own process and make that budget yours, right? And you'll ultimately adopt at the end of the day what is reflective of your priorities as a body. So it's the fall budget process that I think gets at your point that you're raising.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Kruger, one of the things that we did 2 years ago under now Executive Mello, but for Executive Dan Meyer, was we actually adopted through resolution, here are our budget priorities, and we used our general priorities, but we really, I think, identified like, these are the things we think we want you to spend money on. And I think it would be a good idea, especially considering we probably, I love the idea that we're gonna have a whole bunch of money. I do not believe that will be the case that we will be in this
We're
year. And
optimistic.
so I know, we'll keep optimistic. Someone will win the Mega Millions and give it all to Pierce County, right? You're all buying tickets. And
Right.
so I think doing that again and doing that before the executive I think we did it, we could look back at the timing, but I thought that was helpful. Because then it wasn't a surprise for the executive, what our priority, whatever, we won't agree on everything, but what some of those big, like, we're very concerned about these things. So they go to the top of your list, Executive Mello, like, these are the things we really think are important as a council. I think is a helpful tool for him and for us.
I agree. I just was thinking in terms, if all of a sudden like document recording fees drop off, and then what do we do? And where do we start to look at first to make adjustments kind of things? Or, I mean, that's a dedicated fund of some sort, but in that kind of realm, that's what I'm thinking. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions, and we'll do some thinking on that. Councilmember Morel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is maybe more specific on some of the categories, because I want to make sure we're just not throwing things out there. When it comes to community building, remove barriers to annexation and incorporation. What can we do as a county? I need to know what that is, or, I don't know if we should have it in there, but we would encourage annexation of corporations, great, but I don't know if we put up any barriers to that. So I would like to have someone look into that. And then the other one that I would just wanted to highlight under environment and climate, the last bullet, improve urban tree canopy coverage towards 40% canopy goal. Do we have any urban density in unincorporated Pierce County?
So the first, I'm going to answer this kind of in two parts. First, that 40% canopy goal is a goal that's embedded in the comprehensive plan update that the council adopted in December. So that's a current goal for the county. And then in regard to your question about urban density, maybe I just need to get clarification here. This statement applies to the urban area, right? So which is obviously the part of the county that you're trying to accommodate high levels of urban density, right? Residential density or commercial and industrial density. The canopy goal here should be achievable within the UGA. It may have to be achieved by, replanting as development occurs, right? Also planting within public space, right? Such as parks and the right of way, where appropriate, parking areas. So I'm not certain, maybe I'm not understanding the question, but it is an
Yeah,
existing goal of the comprehensive plan.
Okay, because when I think of urban, I think of urban, Tacoma, UP, those
Oh,
cities that have reached that urban density. I consider majority of unincorporated suburban and rural. But what you're saying is over the next 40 years, the densities based on projections will qualify for an urban area?
yeah, so currently the county does have an urban growth area. It allows for a range of residential densities. As few as, one dwelling unit per acre in environmentally constrained portions of the UGA to as much as, well, unlimited density in some cases along like the urban corridors like Pacific Avenue. So there's a range of density permitted, but it does meet the requirements of the Growth Management Act. As far as it being urban versus rural, it does meet the urban requirements. Achieving this tree canopy goal, how it looks will vary based upon the type of development, right? A very intensive, very, very high density site, probably will see very little in terms of tree canopy, lower density, but still urban areas, residential subdivisions, for instance, could see higher levels of urban tree canopy cover. So it'll vary based upon the context of the development.
Okay, I just want to make sure that there again, perception of what an urban tree canopy is, because if we're trying to increase density, I'm not gonna have a fight over a tree versus a living unit. As far as how that model moves forward. Because if we're trying to increase density, then obviously the space that that project goes in will have to have a unique landscape design that may not include the 20 trees that are currently there. So I just don't want to get into a perception of that type of a battle. So just my first glance at it. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for the question. We'll go back to Councilmember Cooper.
No, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for those questions, Councilmember Morel. It brought something back I wanted to check on. The thing with the canopy, I can't help but believe that there is some kind of a plan already on that where it needs to go rather than just throw it out without meaning behind it. And so I'm wondering if there might be a diagram of areas that will be targeted for this upon initial happening. And I'm wondering also, will the plan be that the type of plants are not protected? I wouldn't want a bunch of Gary Oaks planted somewhere for a tree canopy and then you're locked into that forever. So I wouldn't want to make sure it's trees that are disposable.
So what I would suggest for this particular goal is, this is a priority of the council, right? You all, individual members obviously have questions about how you get there. This would be something that would be the charge of the Planning and Public Works Department in terms of implementing the comprehensive plan policies, right? And so how you get there will be reflected in the, you know, the zoning controls and design standards. And so this is an item that if it stays up as a priority of the council, which again, it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, sounds like this would be a great one for the council to get a study session on, right? So, you know, really, what is the path ultimately to achieving a 40%? What's the current state of the canopy in the UGA now? And how short is the county currently of the 40% goal? And how do you get to the 40% goal? How would it look in different development scenarios? That is a discussion, I think, for committee, like Community Development Environment Committee. Ultimately, I mean, I can't answer how to get, the staff can't answer all the particulars, but that's what I would
Good-
suggest
good on that,
for
'cause I
this
th-
conversation.
I think you're answering my second question as well, that it's the same context in the up to 100,000 acres on identifying for the council so we know exactly what qualifies as can be used for that goal. And what does that leave left for the county to have economic prosperity if another 100,000 is taken from use? And even though there may be some harvesting, I don't know what the plan is on that, but I think there needs to be more transparency on the repercussions of such a goal. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for the questions and comments. I think maybe 2 years ago, we adopted street trees, like rules around that. And I remember that was part of the conversation is like, what is an appropriate tree to put in our right of ways and what is not, like Gary Oak's probably not a good choice for lots of reasons. Beautiful tree, lots of stuff that falls off of them. And so I think looking at kind of the code that we do control and some of that would be something to kind of dive into, but agree CDEC might be a good place to talk about it. And wondering back to Councilmember Morrell, like we say urban tree canopy, to be clear for us, do we want to say within the UGA? Is that the intent of what was just adopted? And maybe it's kind of to be clear what we can and can't do, because urban people might go, oh, well, you're going to do this in Lakewood because that's urban, and Lakewood would have a lot to say to me and the rest of us if we started dictating their tree policy. So, okay. Other items from colleagues? I know Mr. Taylor kind of did some rounds to chat with each of you. I guess a question I have is just the R values is new. Initially, my brain is to put them in alphabetical order. That way nobody thinks that we have them in one particular order, like we valued one thing over the other, because it'll be really clear that it's alphabetical. Right now, because it's not, then people might think that there's like a weight to any of them. I think they're all very important. So that's just an initial thing, but that's how I would alphabetize soups in the grocery stores if I had my way. So Councilmember Ayala?
Thank you, Chair. And I do want to echo that last point, both with the R values, but also the council priorities.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say the soups. I think
Oh,
soup,
no.
soup should be alphabetized in
No.
stores.
I did want to add one thing, not necessarily about the priorities, but I think in the spirit of how we ensure that this document is understood by the public and that we have a good sense of how we speak about these priorities, I'd be curious to see once we settle on, excuse me, once we settle on everything, how we can create the matrix of each of these bullet points to these values. However that looks like, I don't know. And I'm sure staff have a lot of thoughts and opinions on it. But if we are going to operationalize these values, making sure that they are kind of fully folded into each of the priority areas. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other feedback or questions we've got? Do we like the format of 11 by 17? Do you want to see it in a side by side? in this world of everybody zooming in on things and sending things as PDFs, this works. I'm curious if somebody wanted to print it out, if there would be a way to have a regular piece of paper size, if just in case available after we finalize everything,
Yeah.
just so that, because if anybody's ever tried to do that, it gets a little wonky. Go back to Councilmember Krueger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did have this on an 8.5 by 11 and actually I could even see it. So
Okay.
it worked okay. And this is great like this as well. But for
fine.
ease of purpose, so the PDF 8.5 by 11 went fine.
Okay.
And if I might ask that, did I understand what Councilmember Ayala was saying, that maybe relate how each priority fits the value? So like the first one might be the first and third value, and the second bullet, the education fits,
Oh, no.
That isn't what I got, but
I was
let's
thinking
check
about a
in.
matrix. But I think that that's getting into the weeds, not for today's conversations,
good.
but you're okay. No, that's probably 2 meetings from now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. And a lot of this is really trying to align with some of our committee work. Like economic and infrastructure made a lot of sense combining because we have an entire committee. We have environment and climate in a committee. Public safety is its own committee. So part of that really works. And then the values portion really are the things that kind of show up in every single aspect. So it's not, some of them were literally just standalone and it didn't make sense. So that's where that values portion came from. So anything else from staff?
I don't believe so, Madam Chair.
Okay. Councilman Morel.
Are we done with this subject, Madam Chair?
I
didn't want you to swing the old gavel there
Okay,
too quick. So
Perfect.
I have a question for staff when we.
that
get
is
to
not
point.
with this. So I guess my question, just Mr. Taylor, is what are next steps for you with this document?
So there's a couple of suggestions for some minor revisions to the document that I'll make. For instance, alphabetizing the R values and then a couple of little bit of wordsmithing. I will then finalize it for purposes of your budget conversation on June the 5th. As you start to put these priorities into action budgetarily, you may decide that there's some changes still needed. So we won't treat it as completely final on June 5th, but good enough for purposes of the budget retreat conversation. So that's how we'll proceed with it if the council's good with that.
Okay, thank you. And this is going to be one of the documents we use when we meet with the port. Might even be nice to have a couple copies going with us up to PSRC on this Friday, whatever day we're going up to Seattle. So could be interesting. Okay, so Councilmember Morale, is it about this?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go to you and then we'll come back to Councilmember Morale.
Thank you, Chair. I just had one request. If we are able to do any hyperlinks to reference material, that would be very helpful, especially if we're looking at this online. So for example, if it is about UGA, we can easily just click on the link that will get us more information on something like that.
We'll take a look at it and see where we can incorporate some smart hyperlinks in there that,
Thank you.
Okay,
like the URA, for instance.
Mhm.
So.
be a good one. Okay, thank you. Okay, sounds like a plan. We will go to Councilmember Morel. It says Councilmember Denson, but I know it's you. My brain has to say the right words.
I'm channeling Councilmember Denson right now. Just wanted to circle back to administrative items, if that's okay. We have the special flag policy that has come forward. And I know that there is an element in there that the executive must notify the council at least 2 weeks before the special flag is flown. But also there's a process the council may object by passing a resolution. How long does a resolution take? And, you know, if we're getting only a 2-week notice, does that fall within the parameters of process of getting a resolution through?
Yeah, technically, a resolution could be introduced on a consent agenda and heard for final the following week. So tight timeline. We're looking at a 2-week period, but theoretically it's doable. But
Okay, so it can be introduced on consent before any council Tuesday meeting,
right,
and then it can be heard as soon or acted on as soon as the following week.
right, because it is a resolution, so it doesn't have the lengthier procedural requirements of an ordinance.
Okay, but on consent, what if we don't agree with moving it forward from consent? Is consent just the tool to move it to the next meeting?
That would be for introduction and scheduling.
Okay,
So yeah, there could be disagreement if on consent, as you remember, it does require a unanimous vote. If something lands on consent, somebody could pull it off and put it under the separate resolutions. Oh, no, it would go under other business because it's just introduction and scheduling. And then you'd vote on it there. It would require a majority vote to introduce it and then schedule it for the following week or whatever the date was that you select.
so a majority could at that time then not vote in favor of it, so it dies on consent.
Right, it could fail. The motion would be to introduce and schedule for X date. And that motion could theoretically fail.
And then it wouldn't move
Right.
on. Okay. Just wanted to make sure I understood the
Mhm.
policy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Either brought up another question or a comment. Councilmember Krueger.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I did bring up another thought. Did I understand that the dates are being moved around for a certain celebration that generally is June and July, June in King County and July in Pierce County, and that is being changed to just June?
So in working with stakeholders in the community, there was conversation about not moving Pride, but aligning Pierce County celebrating Pride and doing our proclamation with the rest of well, literally the world. Everybody celebrates it in June for those that do. And so when we had done our first Pride proclamation, we aligned with Tacoma because of the festival and the history. But we have more and more community groups and organizations and just across the county that are using June. And so to help align with others that are doing this, we moved it to June. So the proclamation is scheduled to be reviewed tomorrow, I believe, on Tuesday study session, and we were going to discuss flags then. And then look at, it'll be on rules the following Tuesday because it's a Memorial Day weekend. So, and then it will be it's scheduled for the June 3rd council agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on? Okay. Mr. Taylor, any other business, or Ms. Long, any other business before us this afternoon?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your feedback and work on this. Thank you to the staff for helping get this into something that we can work with as we move forward. Seeing no other business before us, we are adjourned. Thank you all.